If you watch the news every night, would you be buying stocks right now? Political tensions, trade disputes, nationalism, economic uncertainty, and yet the S&P continues to reach new highs. That's the question I've been thinking about this week at Insight. I'm here in Denver, Colorado at BNY Pershing's annual conference, and I've had the opportunity to hear from some incredible speakers. First, U.S. former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, who immediately walked on stage and told everyone, "Please call me Condi." Then Harvey Schwartz, CEO of Carlyle, one of the world's largest private equity firms. And then the great Phil Orlando, Chief Market Strategist at Federated Hermes, a global asset manager with hundreds of billions of dollars under management. These are people who spend their days advising governments, meeting with presidents and prime ministers, allocating capital and helping shape the global economy. And that's one of the things that I love about Insight. These aren't theoretical conversations. These are people operating at the highest levels of government, highest levels of finance, and on the global market stage. And honestly, I walked away with a bit of a wow moment. Listening to Condi, you quickly realize that many of the challenges we read about on the global stage every day are very real. The geopolitical tensions, the shifting alliances, nationalism, competition between countries. Now, whether you're in Canada, the United States, Europe, or elsewhere, we're all seeing many of the same trends. Countries are becoming more focused on self-reliance. Governments are talking about energy security. They're talking about supply chains, healthcare and defense, economic competitiveness. And these aren't just American conversations anymore. They're global conversations. And then Harvey Schwartz took the idea one step further. As he meets with presidents and prime ministers around the world, he's hearing many of the same themes. Countries are investing, not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. They're investing in defense infrastructure. They're investing in power generation, technology, and AI. But one observation really stuck with me. It's that AI isn't just software. It's the data centers. It's the power generation, the semiconductors, the water and physical infrastructure that are on a massive scale that keep all of this going. And this isn't something that is done in minutes or moments. It's done over years. And in order to do it, it requires capital. So then Phil Orlando steps on stage and presents something completely different or something unexpected. He goes right to the data. Because despite all the uncertainty we hear about every day in the media, the US economy remains remarkably resilient. Consumers are spending. Businesses are investing. The labor market remains strong. And guess what? Corporate earnings continue to grow at a rapid pace. And that's why these markets are reaching new highs. And so I found myself coming back to that same question I started with. How can the world feel so uncertain and yet the markets be so resilient? And so the more I listened, the more I realized the story wasn't about uncertainty. The story was what countries, companies, and investors are doing because of that uncertainty. They're investing. Every challenge being discussed on these stages ultimately requires investment to solve. Energy requires security investment. Infrastructure requires investment. AI requires investment. And these national priorities require investment. And when you start to look at the world through that lens, you begin to understand why so much capital continues to flow into the United States. And that's what struck me most this week. It wasn't the fear, not the uncertainty, it was the opportunity. Now, this isn't the only conversation happening at Insight. There are dozens of other sessions on building advisory businesses, improving client experiences, succession planning, technology, practice management, and growth. But this was the thread that seemed to run through all of them. The future's being built right now, and enormous amounts of capital will be required to make it happen. That's exactly why we keep our foot on the pedal at IA Private Wealth USA. It's why we're here. It's why we invest our time in these conversations. And it's why we continue to build a cross-border platform that gives our clients and advisors access to the world's largest capital markets, to innovative investment solutions, and the technology needed to compete and grow. Look, we're making sure our advisors and clients are positioned to benefit from it. We don't want our advisors hearing about these opportunities years after they emerge. We want them at the forefront. Because look, understanding where the world is heading, it is important, but being positioned to participate in it is even more important. If you want to talk to me about any of these opportunities at IA Private Wealth USA, I'd love to continue the conversation. Thanks so much, y'all, and have a great day.